This is Take Back Our Power with host Joy Binah. Information that supports community health. Information empowering you with personal health. Take back our power. And now, here's Joy.
Today, we are going to demystify a very powerful and effective organization, Barrios Unidos, United Neighborhoods. Welcome to Take Back Our Power. I'm Joy Binah. Our guest is the founder and executive director of Barrios Unidos, Daniel Nane Alejandrez. Nane, as he prefers to be called, is a longtime community organizer, an artist, a historian, a Vietnam veteran, and a peace warrior, working in communities for social justice and to bring peace, hope, and self-empowerment to our youth.
I know you guys have a lot to share, so let's start with something very little, like why we're here.
During my freshman and sophomore year, I was going down the wrong path, having bad grades.
I started getting myself slowly into trouble and slowly into shifting into just doing bad things.
When I come to school, I would hang out with the wrong people, but also I got influenced a lot by older people.
I guess I'm here because, well, my family is involved in gangs and
the mission of Barrios Unidos from the get-go has always been to stop the violence. So we focus on the young people to try to provide as much tools that we can to be able to survive in this environment.
These kids are carrying a lot of baggage, and a lot of the baggage that they're carrying, it doesn't belong to them.
We're providing a place and an opportunity for them to come and to feel safe, for one, and to feel comfortable, and sharing what's going on in their life.
The goal is to reach out to these youth and to reach them where they're at, rather than waiting for them to come to us.
You do the same thing every day. It's just like you're not living, you're on pause. My hope for the future is it's gonna be different. I'm not gonna be the same.
When you look at working, whether it be after school programs, school programs, whether it be within juvenile hall, even whether it be in the prisons, we're touching them in places that are critical to not only survival, but achieving. The BU Productions print shop is an excellent example of how we can bring in youth and not so much taking the profession of printing, but introducing them to the work culture and start to transition them there.
You get a person that says, you know, my family's been in prisons and gangs all my life. So that's all I know. Even though that person is trying to avoid that, if there's no avenues for them, they're gonna go down that road.
They first need to deal with that pain, that hurt, that neglect, that abuse. And that's where the healing center comes into play.
This is our refuge.
Being in there, I got to let out everything I had inside, like all the bad memories. And when I got out, I felt like all that weight was lifted off. And I feel a lot better now about myself. So.
Nane, welcome to Take Back Our Power. It's such a pleasure and an honor to have you with us here today. It really is.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So tell us your story. Tell us how it all started.
Well, first, let me start off by saying that, thank you to everybody that's involved, and particularly I thank for this beautiful day today to get a chance to wake up in the morning and see what we can do to change the world. And so starting off this morning like this, it's an honor. It's an honor to be here with you and be part of this show. So want to make sure that I pay my respects to you, because the work that you do is very important. Well, Barrios Unidos is the concept. Barrios Unidos meaning united neighborhoods, trying to unite people on different ways. We started Barrios Unidos in 1977 in Santa Cruz, but before that we had started out throughout the state just yelling out Barrios Unidos. And at that time there was violence in our communities, in the Latino communities. We're starting to see a little bit more gang violence coming out of the institutions and the YAs at that time and the prison system. And so it was spilling out to the neighborhoods, and we started to say, well, this has got to stop, you know, and we didn't know how to do it or where to start, you know, and we are seeing some of our friends die, family members die, something new that was happening. There was this whole movement of violence, and we said we have to come together as young people. You know, we have to come and see what we can do for our communities. There was people from Southern California and Northern California, Central California. We would come together and have meetings and try to figure out how are we going to address the issue of violence in our barrios. And this is like, you know, almost 40 years ago. And you look at today and we're still dealing with this issue. But let me take you back a little bit in terms of why we started it. Is that we knew from the very beginning that nobody was going to come into our neighborhoods. Nobody was going to come and solve our problems. That the community had to rise up, and young people had to get up and try to make some kind of movement, some kind of noise. We were coming out of the 60s and the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of activism. So I'm a product of that. I'm also a Vietnam veteran, and I came from one war to another war, to a street war, where there was drugs, violence, and you know, my family was deeply involved in it. And I wanted something different. You know, I wanted to do something else. A long time ago, a man by the name of Cesar Chavez had put something in my head about unity, about justice, and about bringing community together. And I heard that when I used to work out in the fields, and it stayed with me. I just didn't know how to, you know, how to go about it. You know, the drugs and the violence was kind of suppressing that, and so, but those words stayed with me about peace. So when I came back from Vietnam, I had seen war. I had seen what war does, and I was trying to change. I was trying to make something for myself, for my family, and started to get involved back with the community. And out of that came the beginning of Barrios Unidos. Unfortunately, we lost so many of those that started. We lost them to the war, you know? And it's been going on ever since. But it gave us an opportunity to look at what young people can do. And this is why it's so important for young people to take the baton now, is that we were all very young at that time, and nobody was taking this issue of violence in our communities. And we decided that we were going to do something about it. And when we started to organize it, we started to see that we did have an impact. We were creating change, but what we weren't having the success in is that we were not getting economic support. We weren't in the school, we weren't in the colleges. The prison system at that time was just starting to boom. So we were losing a lot of our young people to the prison system. And the education system was not there for us. It was hard to get into the university. It's hard to get even to graduate high school. And so we've seen how that system has changed a little bit, but still there's a lot of work to be done. And so Barrios Unidos, as we kept organizing, it just kept growing. And people in San Diego, people in LA, people in Bakersfield, people in Stockton, people in Watsonville, Salinas, you know, all through all these areas we were organizing. in 1977, I was accepted into UC Santa Cruz, and that's where we started to really move Barrios Unidos in this area. And for the first 15 years, we worked on a volunteer basis. In 1992, we started to incorporate as Barrios Unidos. We took the slogan Barrios Unidos and made it an organization. And that's how Barrios Unidos became. And then we formed chapters throughout the state. At one time, we had 27 chapters across the country, you know, from Washington, D.C. to Virginia to Washington State, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nebraska. All these states that were having the same problem that we were having. You know. And out of that became a lot of other things.
Mm. So it started here.
Started here in this area, yeah.
And what was it like when you first moved into your new location? How long have you been in your new location?
In the what?
In location on SoCal.
Well, you know, the other thing that Cesar Chavez also taught us about stopping the machinery, stopping organizing the people, buying the machinery. But he also taught us about the land, that we are land-based people, but without no land. Yeah. And here we're put in these concrete jungles and little matchboxes. We call apartments or houses, little small houses. But he said we need to buy land. We need to be somos de la tierra. You know, we're people of the earth. You know, and so that always stayed with me. And so we were always looking for a home. And in 1997, we were working with the city of Santa Cruz, and we were looking for a space because we had been in different locations. And one of the other things that happened within the movement of art is that a lot of us went back in and studied about our indigenous roots. And we got into the more looking at who we were as a people, as a nation, and what ceremonies we had lost, and try to regain those. So one of them was the sweat lodge, and how do we purify ourselves? So it's like going to church, you know. How do we take that culture and relearn that? So we were able to get the teachings of those elders to continue to cleanse ourselves spiritually, and because we see this as a spiritual movement, you know, to try to end the violence, and we couldn't find places to build our sweat lodges. So you know, again, the whole fact of having land where we could do what we needed to. So we were able to purchase 2 acres of prime real estate in Santa Cruz, where we have our headquarters, we have our silk screening, we have a few houses there, and we also leased to different businesses. That went on, and then out of that, we were able to refinance that and buy 5 acres up in the mountains in Santa Cruz, where we have our Walter Guzman Retreat Center. Walter Guzman was our chairperson. He was also our spiritual leader. He passed away. Unfortunately, he never got to see the retreat center, but we named it after him. And that serves as a gathering place for healing. There's hundreds of people that go there on a yearly basis to get out of the cities, people from Oakland, San Francisco, all the way from LA, Los Baños, Fresno, they all come. Salinas and Watsonville, they all come to this place. And it's not a very big place, it's not a fancy place. We have tree houses, and we have teepees, and we have small little cabins, but it's our place. And so we get to bring people that are having negative groups that are having problems with each other. We try to bring them in and talk about more of our commonalities than our differences, and that makes a big impact on their lives.
You also have groups. You have retreats for kids.
We have a lot of retreats for kids. We just finished the Warrior Circle. We had about 40 young kids from different areas come in, and for 3 to 5 days, sometimes we have them try to teach them about songs, about the culture, about the education, and we bring in people that have gone through the what we call the madness, they've experienced juveniles, jails, prisons, to come and talk to them, so that they can learn at a young age that they don't have to go through that. They don't have to go through that path. That people have gone through that and are now coming back, and after serving time, and they're coming back and taking care of themselves, and are being able to support. And I think, really believe that that's a resource that the community had ignored for many years. But to a lot of us that have relatives that have been there, we knew that there's this resource there. See, a lot is, if we go back, in 1975, 11 members of my family went to prison at one time. And it just devastated the family. You know, at one time, I counted 35 members of my family in prison, one in college. That was me. And so I always kind of felt that I had to give even more. You know, I've lost about 15 relatives to violence, drugs, alcohol. So I always felt that I had to work twice as hard for my two brothers that passed away. So it's a non-stop thing. And so now, in my family, we're going on 4 generations of incarceration. 4 generations, and that's one family out of hundreds. And that's one family, and for myself, when I was going through this, I know a little bit about the system, but I look at the families, when I lined up to go visit, I look at the families that are there. They have no experience or no knowledge of the system. And just sit there and take the abuse and the verbal and the abuse that sometimes happens in these institutions to go visit their relatives, you know, and they'll take it because they don't want to lose that visit. So we also need to call on our brothers and sisters that behind the walls too, that those relatives come from a long ways. And it's up to them to make a difference in there, because if they're not going to change, it defeats the purpose, you know, for us to going in there. So I've dedicated my life to those that are ready, those that are willing to change their lives. And I'll do anything, and I tell them I'll walk with you until they get what's going on, and it's been so successful to see the change in life. And again, that's a resource that we had never touched before, or people were afraid of, because of all the misconceptions in the media and who was in prison, what they did. I never ask a person what they did. It's, do you want to walk in a different way from here on? And that's how we dedicate our lives to that.
So how you have programs in the prison? I know that the second half of this show we're going to be interviewing a couple of wonderful men who were previously incarcerated and now do fabulous work in the community because of Barrios Unidos. And so tell us a little bit about...
well, you know, we have different programs. We start with like the kids clubs. We have from 6 to 13, we have young kids. We have youth groups that meet and take them out to the movies, homework, take them outings, baseball games, that kind of stuff. And then we have a program at Juvenile Hall where we're working with them at Juvenile Hall, try to keep them from going into the institution, or those that are going to be tried as adults. Then we try to stay with them as much as we can through that process and try to help them out. And then whatever institution they're going to, we stay connected with them so that we can be that liaison between them and their families. Okay? And then we have what we call the Prison Project, which is a project that's been doing this for 26 years, going into the institutions. Remember, my family went in 1975, so it's been a long journey for us. So because we have been personally affected by it, we felt that if we were going to stop the violence in the streets, we needed to get behind those walls. And it took years and years and years of doing work in order to be accepted into those facilities. So now that we're there, we see the fruit that's there, and it's not about Barrios Unidos or any other organization that there's going. It's about the people that are ready to make that change, and we're just messengers. We're facilitators, teachers, whatever, uncles, whatever you want to call us. The administration calls us. Some of the CEOs call us do-gooders, or they call out hug a thug day when we come in, because they're in a different mindset.
Yeah.
And not that they're bad people, they're just in a different mindset, which today we see that they see it, that they have to change. Because they're now no longer dealing with that same mentality. They're seeing that they have to change, and because of the laws and the population within the system, we have to change. Because we spend too much money in prisons, a lot less money on a student. So that has to change. We spend about $9,000 on a student. We spend anywhere from $46,000 to $60,000 to incarcerate a person. In the state of California, we spent over $260,000 a year to incarcerate someone under 18 in the California Youth Authority, which is the Juvenile Justice Department now.
Crazy.
So we're spending a lot of money in incarceration, and it's not working.
No.
Hasn't worked for years. So now there's people starting to realize that.
So tell me, we have a little bit of time left, and I wonder if you could tell me about how the community can support Barrios Unidos.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you telling me the story when you first moved into your location in SoCal, how it was very difficult to become accepted by the community. They had preconceived notions of what Barrios Unidos was, and they were afraid of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what can you say to the community to get their support?
Well, I think that, people say that never judge a book by its cover. That's so true, because people put up signs saying that stop Barrios Unidos from busing gang members into our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the gang members they were talking about were little kids.
Yeah.
So if you start thinking that way, then what kind of society have we become? So I try to tell people that come and see for yourself, get involved. What are you doing in your community? What are you doing to change this? Who's going out to the streets? When there's a shooting, who goes out there? When there's a burglary or things happening, who goes out there? Yeah, you have law enforcement go out there, but within the community, how do you get involved? And a lot of times it's a hard choice. I would like to see the community be more involved, be more receptive to organizations that are trying to do something, and not be so quick to judge you. Been at this for almost 40 years, and you're going to continue until the wheels fall off, But I think that at the end, we look at what have we given in life, what have we done, did we make a change, did we contribute to something positive? And I think when people come into Barrios Unidos and they see that maybe we're doing it in a different way, we're not your typical organization. We are proud of who we are. We stand on our beliefs. Politically, we have to be involved to change the laws that affected our people. The economic situation is not good for us. The housing, people can live in Santa Cruz or this area. So we have to change all that. And when you start to change the system and you start to push back, then people start to get a different notion. If you go along, just write the system, you try to assimilate to it, then there's no problem. But when you start to ask questions and you start to get involved, and that is not right, and that putting money into the prison system is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. We should put it into places like this, into education, and make a difference. We should give those individuals an opportunity to be able to help that person is graduating from the university shouldn't come out with the debt that they have, the tuitions that they owe. So it's a system that needs to be changed from the top, you know, so that we can affect local communities. But locally, I think that more and more people are being involved, and I look forward to working with the community.
I know I've been into Barrios Unidos a couple of times now, and I have to say I've never felt so welcomed. And there's so many people that came up to me, are you being helped? You being helped? Nice to see you. You know, just so comfortable and so welcomed. Yeah. And, you know, I think that when people don't have the experience, there's fear.
There's fear, yeah. Well, you know, especially right now in this climate, this political climate is so so divided, and we have individuals out there putting hate propaganda and continuing to divide. This nation has not been so divided as it is right now, and it's going to take young people to come together to say, you know what, we're not buying it. We're going to come together. People of all colors, people of all ages and sizes and everything, got to come together. You know, because if we learn something from the civil rights movement, is that there's people that shine, you know, but the people that were really involved in doing that footwork, they're not asking for no fame or want to be on TV or anything. They know that if they get involved, things are going to change in their community. And I think that's what I see today is there's a lot of young people involved that are out there working on a daily basis, whether it's behind a camera or it's behind, you know, giving a speech or just taking an elder across the street. Those things matter, you know, and we have to support, you know, movements like that.
Yeah. So in conclusion, is there anything else you want to put out there?
Well, one is, I really want people to, if you have a loved one or someone that's incarcerated, that you really take a look at, you know, what can you contribute so that we stop that? You know, we've already learned that we can incarcerate our way out of these problems. What do we do to involve ourselves, even if it goes around our own judgment? And we have to look at the issue of race. Race in America needs to be discussed. We need to have accountability of law enforcement. What's going on in the streets with law enforcement and the community? Why are we so divided? You know, so those things need to come up, and that's what I see in the immediate future is the homelessness, the economic situation that we're in, and we need to stay culturally and spiritually grounded in order to move another 40, 50 years. You know, so that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah. You know, Nane, it's been such an honor and pleasure to have you today on Take Back Our Power. You have dedicated your life to this service work, to reaching out to your community and to your brothers and sisters, and I just want to honor you and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Part 2 of this show, Nane will be explaining the Barrios Unidos prison project, and our additional guests will be 2 men who were formerly incarcerated and are now working out in the community, sharing their experience, their hope, and their wisdom, transforming lifestyles from hopeless and negative to hopeful, positive, and self-empowered.